Hi everyone, thank you for taking some time out of everyone's busy days today to spend an hour with myself and Jamie to talk you through our student assistance programme. So Jamie and I are both partnership development managers at Endsleigh. Jamie looks after the north of the country and I look after the south. And it's just the two of us really specialising in this area at Endsleigh. So we're the experts that you can ask all the questions to at the end. Jackie will be sharing your contact details at the end of the session today for us to follow up to see if you've got any questions. So if you prefer not to get Jackie to share the details with us, please do drop her an email and let her know. So Jamie's going to kick off. So over to you, Jay.
Lovely. Thanks, Carly. And yeah, just on the details thing, it's not to spam you or anything. It's just to get a bit of information about your college and your circumstances and that kind of thing. So just to follow up on that. So yeah, so the purpose of today really is to introduce to our student assistance programme, tell you a little bit more about it, why and how we've developed it, and how ultimately you could support your current services. So hopefully, you'll get all the information that you need. We'll have opportunity for questions. As we say, we've got our contact details here as well. So if you want to follow up, you can do that too. So many of you might be familiar with Endsleigh. You may even have been insured by Endsleigh at uni back in the day. And therefore you may also be wondering how or why we've kind of become to be involved in student wellbeing. Doesn't kind of seem the most natural fit on the face of that, I suppose. So to give a little bit of background, Endsleigh was founded by the National Union of Students back in 1965. And that was because students were seen to be too high risk. The insurers didn't want to insure them. And if they did, the premiums were extortionate. So the NUS actually decided to take things into their own hands and they created Endsleigh Insurance. So the NUS was actually based on Endsleigh Street in London at the time, and that's where our names come from. And the president and CEO of the NUS still sit on our board, so they're still very much involved. And so since our inception, really, students in the education sector have very much been at the heart of what we do. And this is just to give a bit of a background of the coverage that we have within the education sector at the moment. So over the past 55 years, 56 years this year, we have been the first to do a lot in the education sector and break new ground. And that's something that we're really proud of. So we're the first to cover halls of residence, international students, but we're also actually the first insurance company to provide the same discounts to same-sex couples, but also the same pension rights and benefits to same-sex couples. And that was only in early to mid-90s, so it's not that long ago. But we were a company who's kind of leading the way, really. We always want to do that. We always want to do the right thing. And it's a tradition we want to maintain. And we see that supporting student wellbeing is kind of that next Endsleigh first. It's the next thing to do on our journey. So Endsleigh, we have lots of different relationships in the education sector with colleges, universities, other student-based organisations. And it's through those relationships we were getting asked, is there anything we can do to support student wellbeing? The services are under pressure. All of you will know that much more than we do. And at the time, there wasn't. So around about 2 years ago, we commissioned research with Red Brick, and we went out to speak to people who are in your roles, in your positions, to learn about exactly what the issues are and what's needed to support you and what's needed to help, really. And that has led us to where we are today with our student assistance programme. So for us, this isn't about taking anything away from what you do. It's not about outsourcing any issues or outsourcing your student wellbeing. It's very much about supporting and complementing what you do. It's about integrating as much as we can and maybe even just relieving some of the pressure, whether that is waiting lists, whether it's being able to cover out of hours, or when, you know, college is out of term. It's about that. So, and Carly will cover how we integrate this into what you currently do. So this student assistance program, it's kind of based on the foundations, on the infrastructure of an EAP. But EAPs are obviously too employee focused, they're too clunky, they're not geared towards students. So we very much geared this towards student issues, how institutions work, but also student tone of voice and things like that. So that's how we've got to this point. And it's a bit of a cliche, but you know, it's definitely been a journey over the last 2 years, and we've constantly changed, and that's something that we're proud of, really, because it's a constant development. And there's always something we learn. The guarantee we'll get a question today that we don't know the answer to, and we've had a million questions, but there will always be something. But that's great for us, because that's how we learn and that's how we develop. And again, Carly will come on to some of those developments. But for us, it's a constant moving thing, and we'll take feedback and we'll see what we can do to improve it. But now we cover over 202,000 students within the education sector, something that we're really, really proud of. So the foundation of the Student Assistance Programme is a 24/7, 365-day-a-year telephone helpline where students can get in touch for in-the-moment support or advice or guidance on different issues. What was really important for us was being able to ensure that support was available all the time, not just 9 to 5 or for a few hours of the day, but it's humans that the students talk to or interact with, but also that the service is based in the UK. So a lot of providers will have a smoke and mirrors approach to this, if you like, so that they will divert calls to a different country after a certain time of the day, or they'll use answer machines or bots. And for us, that's just all unnecessary obstacles. So we don't do any of that. The service is available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, whether bank holidays or Christmas, 2 in the morning. And the support centres where the counsellors are based are in Manchester and Leicestershire. And it's always a human that the students will interact with. So whether that's on the phone or through the app. We'll cover the app a little bit later, but there's a live chat function, but it's always a human on the other end of that, and that was really important for us. So this is about ensuring there's no unnecessary barriers. There's no separate triage team, so the students having to explain it to one person and gets diverted to another person and start again. It will be a counsellor that the students will speak to. And we've seen at kind of the beginning of this, around about 25% of calls were outside of 9 to 5 at weekends. And our latest kind of data is showing us that that's increased up to 40% quite quickly, which shows that, there's a need for students to reach out of hours, and also that, we can provide that support, which again is really, really important. So this is an overview of the issues, some of the issues that students can get support with. So whether it's about student life or home life, lots of different things. And we try to reflect the diversity within the student demographic and the students who would be studying your colleges, who may be at very different kind of life stages. We also have the financial, legal and medical information helplines as well. So these aren't 24/7, they're 9 to 9 or 9 till 5. But the reason we include these is to provide kind of wraparound support for the students. So a student may have stress and anxiety, and that's because they've got they're in debt, and they're in debt because they've got a gambling issue. So the counsellors and advisors will be able to support that student across kind of those different areas. This is an overview of the kind of the triage process, if you like. So this is when a student calls, we'll get through to a BACP accredited counsellor who will assess the needs of that student, whether it's kind of immediate support that they need, or it might be some advice on a certain issue that they'll have. But this is every first call to assess the risk level and everything with the student as well. But it will be, they'll get the student will get straight through to speak to that counsellor again. We don't have that separate triage team. The counsellors will be able to do it, meaning that they can give that support really, really quickly. Again, so there's no barriers to the students getting that help. The counsellors will have a kind of minimum of level 4 qualification in counselling or psychotherapy, minimum of 250 counselling hours, although the majority have kind of over 300. They'll have 3 years post-qualification experience. They'll have the DBS checks, ongoing CPD. So everything that you'd want and hope that the counsellors will go through for their kind of professional accreditations and that kind of thing. And then we also have face-to-face counsellors who have all the indemnity insurance and checks, again, everything that you would hope and expect really from something like this. Because of that network of counsellors that we have, we're able to support in areas where even I think the biggest and richest institution, wouldn't quite be able to achieve on their own. So with this network of counsellors we have, if it's clinically, and this is important, if it's clinically and therapeutically appropriate and beneficial, that we're able to match a student from the BME, a BME student with a counsellor who is either from the BME community themselves or have experience working in the BME community. So we'll be able to, the counsellors will be able to support that. And this is important because some families or cultures who may frown upon students reaching out for help and support in this way. So again, we're able to provide that support for students if required. So this is an overview of the service level agreements, just to give you an idea of how we perform really in terms of delivering this service. So the telephone calls are answered within 2, 3, 4 rings. Me and students can speak to a student really quickly. We're also able to arrange callbacks, so a student can request that either through the phone or email, or again that live chat function that I mentioned. And again, this might be useful if a student wants to go somewhere a bit more private, have that 2 hours to go find somewhere else so they can speak to the student as well. We have an option to include structured counselling sessions, again, which Carly will talk about. But with that, we're able to get a student into their first session within 5 working days very quickly. But for those students who are deemed at risk, so kind of high risk students, we're able to fast track for their first session within 24 hours. And again, we'll do that within kind of a round trip of where the student is studying or living, to make sure that, again, it's just that minimising any obstacles or issues that may get in the way. So that's kind of the foundation of the SAP, the Student Assistance Programme, if you like. Like I said, there's lots more info. There's a number of different options as well, which you can pick, just depending on what your college needs, where you think that the pressures are. So Carly, do you want to talk through those things?
Yeah. Great, thanks, Jamie. So I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of the level of services that we have available, as well as the more detailed process that a student will actually go through when they do call through, as well as the app and the management information that you can expect to kind of demonstrate the utilisation of the service that you choose. So the services are broken down into 3 different options. We have our entry-level option, which is the helpline for Student Assistance Programme. Now, the helpline only allows unlimited access for a student to call to speak with a BEACP accredited counsellor, unlimited times, 24/7, 365 days a year. So it's a completely uncapped service. Jamie's mentioned about our morals and ethics as a company, and the one thing that we wanted to do was to make sure that a student was never turned away halfway through your contract because you'd hit a certain cap, or for you to be charged halfway through because you've exceeded the limit. So the service is completely uncapped throughout the 12 months, so they can use as much or as little as they want. And as part of the service and what we class as your onboarding, we will have multiple meetings with you to create a dossier of information for our counsellors to be able to perform and provide that wraparound service for your students as soon as your students call up, essentially. So it will be getting a list of all of the services that your students have available to them, so our counsellors can refer back into your services. We do also have one thing we're very proud that we've added to the service over the last 6 months is our at-risk and student protocols. This will allow us to feed certain information back to you. Obviously, it's a fully confidential service, but those high-level at-risk safeguarding situations allows us to then provide that information back to you, which has been a key part of this service. And I will spend a bit of time in a minute to talk you through that. I know some of you will have ESOL students, so we actually provide this service in over 200 different languages, so we can provide a translation service. We do have bilingual and multilingual counsellors working in the call centre, as well as an additional translation service for those more unique languages that aren't very frequently spoken over here. In addition, the students have access to a death, financial, legal and medical information, and the reason we have those in place is because a student may be presenting quite a high level of anxiety, but as you'll all be very familiar with when you're dealing with a student like that, when you break down the layers, actually it might be that they have a problem with their employer if they have a part-time job, or money issues at home, for example. So they're also there to support the root of the issue. But again, like I said, we can also refer into your own services as well. The level up from this takes it through to a complete and essential SAP, sorry. This allows us to then provide all of the same options in option 1, but then provide up to 6 sessions of structured counselling on top of that as well. Essential is over the phone or through a Zoom conversation like this, and then complete is face-to-face, and Jamie's referenced there as well, that they're within a 30-mile round trip if it is a face-to-face option you wanted to go for. Jamie also mentioned as well about the 5 working days from actually that initial conversation and initially making us aware of their challenges to actually getting in for their first session of counselling. I know we've got a couple of questions popping up throughout, so if it's okay, I'll come back and answer them at the end if you don't think I've answered them in the next few slides, if that's okay. So if we can go to the next slide, Jamie. As part of the service, whatever option you take, you do have access to an app as well as an online portal. Generally speaking, we see that the apps obviously get higher utilisation than the online portal in the student background. So on the app, you get access to, as Jamie mentioned, students can make a call back. They can access a web chat, and that's a text service essentially. And you are only ever talking to a counsellor on the other end of the text, but it's sometimes students feel more comfortable reaching out in that format. As well as that, there's access to online self-learning courses. There's mood trackers. The mood tracker is really quite interactive, so we send push notifications through every week to ask the students to take a step back and reflect on how they felt their week's been. So if it's a green, that they feel it's been a good week, we'll then prompt questions to ask them to reflect on why they think it's been a good week. If it's the other side of the scale, if it's a red or amber or even yellow, we might then push through additional support, such as reaching out, speaking to us, requesting a call back, or some of the self-help techniques that are available through the app as well. We've recently launched Bright TV, which is essentially podcasts, and that's where celebrities have had their time to create a clip on talking about their own mental health and well-being at different stages in their life. We've recently got Dr. Alex from Love Island. He's ambassador for young people's mental health and well-being, and he spends the time talking about his experience when he was a student. So really relatable for students. So a student can get in touch, like I've mentioned and Jamie's mentioned, in multiple different ways, but essentially the student contacts us, and through the through the triaging process, we will then make a decision on what situation we need that student to go down, whether it be in the moment and at-risk support, or whether actually they need to just have a chat with the triage service and speak with a counsellor, or actually going through and referring them back to speaking to your teams on site. The other way that the student can be referred through to the service is through your teams. So your teams can actually reach out to our call centres and actually ask for a student to be called back as well. If if you do any referrals, we will also notify the person who's done the referral to say we've reached out to speak to your student, we haven't been able to make contact, we will try again, or we've made contact, and then obviously we take over from there. So probably the most important part of this service, and I mentioned it earlier on when I was talking about the options, and I think from seeing briefly some of the questions that we've had coming up, this might answer some of those. So this is what I want to talk through now, is how we assess the call, we profile the call, and then ascertain the level of risk, which depends on the action that we take. So as you can see, it's RAG profiled from 0, which is a non-existent risk call, right the way through to 4, which is an immediate situation. From a 0 or 1 call that we have coming through, there's no immediate risk that's being presented. It might be that the student has an exam the next morning and they've got some anxiety and they're struggling to sleep, or they're having a panic attack. We can then refer them back into your services. We can talk them through some of the self-help tools that are available on the app, but not necessarily anything we feel we need to intervene and maybe escalate, for example, emergency services. Level 2 is a little bit more of a concerning, where we feel we actually need to contact and escalate the situation to a GP, providing the student's given us consent. And then level 3 and 4 are the high risk cases, and this is where we will provide intervention to support that student in the moment. So this is something that we have developed, as I mentioned, over the last 6 months. It's very unique, and we're very proud to be something that we can support colleges with, because it is very, very important to make you aware of those students that are either putting themselves at risk or are in a risky situation. If a student calls up and presents any of these risk situations through the triage process, that counsellor that initially takes that phone call will raise their hand. Now, they're raising their hand to make the senior clinicians who work in the call centre at the same time aware that they have a high risk call that's come through. That senior clinician will then remotely listen into the call in the background, so the initial call that's made by that student is never interrupted in any way at all. That clinician, senior clinician, will then make a decision as to what course of action may be needed to be taken. That may be engaging with your teams to make you aware that we've got a student that's at risk. It also may include calling an emergency services to assist in this situation. The one thing we will do, and is at the main agenda point for the whole call that's been made, is to make sure that student is put at safety, and we will do everything in our utmost to make sure that is the case, whether that be staying on the phone with that student until emergency services turn up, or staying on the phone until maybe one of your team members are able to assist. What we will then do is provide you with a written overview of the situation and that student's information, so that you can pick up the support the next day, complementing what we can also do to support you with that as well. I've mentioned briefly, and I'll come on to it in a minute, there's a lot of meetings that we go through from an onboarding perspective, and the reason we do that is so that we can ensure that we are following privacy policies correctly to allow us to feed that information back to you. I hope I've covered that off. If any of you do have any questions, I know it's quite a detailed point, so I can answer any of those at the end of the session or later on. Here's the next slide, Amy. So I think I've seen a couple of you pick up about, are we going to get trends? Are you going to have what information are coming through from you from the management information? So we provide a suite of information on a quarterly basis. So you have 2 account managers that look after your account, and we're there to support with utilisation to promote the service as much as possible. And this utilisation report, comes through, and it provides you an overview of the calls that are coming, the types of calls that we're getting, any trends, the demographic of students that are calling, the times of day they're calling, and also if we're getting any of those high risk cases coming back, if any of them are being referred back into you, or also if we're having any monitored cases as well. For those of you that are aware, GAD7 and PHQ9 are ways to assess anxiety and depression at the start and end of therapy. So that would be if you went for an option 2 or 3 where structured therapy is put in place. Those questions are asked at the start and the end to make sure that that student has made progress throughout. And that is also something that's included within your MI report as well.
Just on the sorry, Carly, just on the mention that this is something we're developing, so we can give more insight. So one of the things that we're working on at the moment is kind of college related outcomes. So it may be if a student's been off for a little while because of mental health issues, we'll be able to measure whether that student is kind of returned back to learning. There's lots of different categories, so that's something we're developing at the moment, but it's just about giving you as a college just as much information as possible so you can assess the effectiveness really. And it goes back into what Carly mentioned there about trends, excuse me, and identifying any issues and things like that.
I think the one thing that we found is the demographic of the student is actually something that our colleges find really interesting and important, because then they can proactively reach out to, for example, male students, because they're not interacting with the service quite as much as your female students are. So it really allows you to target some of your students. We go to the next slide, Jamie.
Okay.
So I've mentioned a couple of times about onboarding, account management, etc. So we will go through a number of meetings, like I said, to agree a flow chart and a process that you would like us to follow, for example, on those high risk calls, and give us all the information that we need to create that dossier of information so that our counsellors can access your information about your particular college. So we are doing that wraparound support. We have the regular review meetings. Aside from the regular review meetings, which is providing the MI on the phone line, utilisation on the phone line, you also have access to a back office for the app, and that allows you to go in on a daily or weekly or however frequently you want to run a report to find out, again, who's using the app, what kind of self-help courses they're interacting with, etc., etc.
So it's confidential, so you wouldn't see individuals who are using it, but it's, again, yeah, that trend thing of seeing, right, is there a certain article that our student body are looking at, and is it anxiety? Okay, if it is there a reason for it? Can we do a joint campaign where we can provide materials for an awareness piece? So yeah, it's really good to assess any trends really within the student population as a whole.
Yeah. So we also provide you, before you go live, with a suite of information and marketing materials, from posters, leaflets, right the way through to wallet cards, so that students can put them in their wallet. And as well as that, we will work with you to provide constant material, as Jamie's just mentioned, throughout the year, picking up on trends, but also newsletters which are relevant to the life cycle of a student, so to speak, around, for exam times, going to a new college at the start of term, making friends, etc. And they will come out to you once a month so that you can forward them on to students.
Yeah, I think that kind of constant awareness for the students is really important, because student who knows about it in January but didn't need it may then need it in March. So it's just about that, keeping that awareness up, to make sure that students know that they can reach out in the support services. Support services are there. And then just this point at the top about support for staff. So appreciate that you as colleges will have your own procedures and things in place, but it may be that if it could be a lecturer, or a tutor, or a mentor who may not be, or just may need a little bit more reassurance, they're able to contact the counselling helpline, the same line as the students would use, just as a kind of a sense check that, right, this student's presented these issues, this is what I'm going to do, is that kind of the right approach to take? And every case will be different. The counsellor might say, yeah, that sounds fine, try that, or they might kind of give them advice. They might try to speak to the student if they can themselves, or maybe in some cases that the advice is to call emergency services. But it's just to give that extra level of reassurance and support if it is needed. Obviously, if you're confident and you prefer to kind of keep that in house, that's absolutely fine. We're not trying to force anything on you, and like I said earlier about taking anything away. It's just that kind of constant support. So that's sorry, Carly. Yeah.
So that kind of wraps up our presentation for the day. I know there's been a couple of questions that have popped up in the Q&A. I don't know if you've had a chance to keep on top of them, Joe, but
we'll go through them. And I know that one of the questions may be about how much does it cost. It's a top question. So the costs are something that we look at on a case-by-case basis, because it's dependent on student numbers and obviously the level of service that you want, which option that we went through. But for a very rough idea, and this is caveated, as I say, with numbers and stuff, but it'd be starting from less than £2 per student per year. But as Carly said, we'll reach out to you individually to be able to give you some exact costings on that.
Yeah.
So Carly, should we get the chat up so we've had a few questions through.
Yes. So Annette's asked a couple of questions. I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up, if that's okay. So reporting back to us, would you be able to share common themes, trends, so we can complement the app with face-to-face sessions? I hope I've covered your question in some of the MI information that I covered. But yeah, brilliant. Whereas an FE college of students aged 14 and 16 to 19. So the youngest that we would be able to work with is 16-year-olds. So everyone over 16 we can support. I'm assuming in terms of reporting back to institutions, it will be confidential, yes. So we won't know the students have access support, not individually unless it's a risk or a safeguarding situation, then you will know about the individual student. But we'll have been told those have been fast-tracked for support, so yes. Any other questions at all? I think we've got a couple more coming up.
Some of this Q&A. So is there a maximum age cut-off? No. We've just got that minimum of 16-year-olds to access the service, but there's no maximum. So as I say, we've got for kind of more mature students, adult learners, it will help them with all the different issues that we can help with. If a student interrupts or withdraws from their study whilst they're receiving help and support, do you still support them? And if they're no longer a student at the institution, yes. So we will make sure that we don't leave a student hanging either in the middle of their structured therapy, or if they are phoning up to get more support. I think for us is, if a student was no longer studying at yours but reached out for help, the most important thing is helping them. So we're not precious about that. But yeah, we will make sure that they've finished their either their structured counselling, or we will still support them. We'll kind of leave them in a safer place, rather than just letting them kind of continue and cut them off. And for the demographics, this is again an area that we're developing. At the moment, it goes with gender, so male, female. We've got non-binary and not disclosed. We are looking at how we can break that down. the balance we need to strike is not putting more barriers in up against the student by asking them lots of detailed questions about their demographics and their background. So, but obviously on the flip side of that, it's important, I suppose, to be able to give you that information. So it is a work in progress. We're working on that, but as I say, just getting that balance right of getting enough information to help, but not asking too much of the students so that they feel that they don't want to come in and reach out to this to the service again.
I think we've got a couple more ones. Lou, if a student accesses 6 sessions of counselling, is it weekly, etc., or if they can access those sessions throughout a longer time frame? It's completely agreed between the student and the counsellor as to when they want those sessions. They can do once a week, they can do a couple of times a week if that fits in with their schedule better. So it's something that's agreed between the student and the counsellor. What options are available after the 6 initial counselling sessions? So a student can have up to 6 sessions per issue of counselling. So we normally say 6 because generally speaking, that's the amount of time frame that we feel that students are left in a better mindset and can continue with some actions themselves. If we do feel that a student needs to have them extended, we will reach out to the college directly to ask if you're comfortable for us to pay on an ad hoc basis for an additional 1 or 2 sessions. But generally speaking, we don't go past 8 sessions. If the student, like I said, it's 6 sessions per situation though. So if, for example, a student called up, went through 6 sessions because they had a bereavement, but then 3 or 4 months down the line, they had a relationship issue, they could have another 6 sessions of counselling as well. There
is the option, generally it will be 6 sessions included within the option that we do. We can include an 8 session option if you wanted to. Obviously the costs involved in that, but if you felt that you'd prefer to offer your students an 8 counselling session model, then we can look at that. But generally speaking, it is that 6 sessions that we do. I think we've had a question in the chat. Jane's had to leave, but thank you, Jane. And then Tracy, are all staff counsellors psychotherapists? Yeah, so they have either level 4 qualification in counselling or psychotherapy. They have their accreditations. So yeah, they've got the full qualifications and accreditations that they need and want.
Yeah. I think Alice has asked a question about pricing with the costing. Is student number for full-time in the ILR or including part-time over the year? It's everyone's different, so every college we work with is different, which is why generally speaking we'll have a half-an-hour chat with you to really understand your model and the students you want it to support. So we could pick up with you at a later date if that's okay, Alistair. Any other questions? Oh,
is the presentation available?
Jackie, you'll have to answer that.
Yeah, this is getting recorded.
Hi everybody, I'm here in the background. Yes, it will be available online. I'm going to convert it and put it onto YouTube, but also make it available to all members and on the NAMS website. And I'd like, if it's possible, a copy of the presentation, please, Jamie, so that I can share that too.
Yeah, of course, that's not a problem. Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
Do you have any other questions before we finish up for the day?
I think you're there or thereabouts. I think I can't see anything else coming through. I've been monitoring.
Brilliant.
Alistair's come back to say thanks.
Excellent.
I think we're there. So if I can just say a very quick thank you to you both for your time today. I found it very interesting. I have been listening in the background, but it's really valuable what you're offering, and I'm sure our members have got a lot out of it. So I'll just say thank you for now, and if you two want to close, and then I'll end the recording.
Not a problem. Thank you ever so much for all your time today.
Yeah, we've got these are our contact details, so you can take them down. Obviously, we've got this the student wellbeing inbox, which we'll both get, or if you prefer one of us or the other, then you've got our individual contact details if needed. But yeah, if we'll reach out, you can reach out to us. We'll find a way to connect and, like I say, go through kind of each college individual needs. So yeah, I look forward to our next conversations.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you.